Sorry, we're just waiting to go live. Awesome. Good evening, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm very excited. This is one of the hottest talked about topics. I think wherever you go, you just hear these words: AI, ML, big data. So these are words that are definitely cropping us all around us, whether you're in the industry or you're not. So we're very excited that we have with us today Mythily Ramesh, who's the co-founder and CEO of NextWealth, and she's also an independent director with Karnataka Bank and, of course, IIM Udaipur. This session, we're going to be talking a lot about the hype that's behind the AIML industry and what it really means for India. We'll delve into women in the AIML and also about women entrepreneurs that are in this space and what are the opportunities that are here. I am Sukirti Gupta. I'm the co-founder of Sipping Thoughts. Sipping Thoughts is a multi-platform media company that was set up keeping in mind the tagline, Real Women, Real Thoughts. We wanted to create a no judgment platform and create a network of women for women and, of course, the men that have supported us. We reach to about 2.5 million women on a monthly basis. BW Business World requires no introduction. It's a fortnightly magazine which was launched more than 3 decades ago. It is among India's largest and most respected business magazine. The BW team prides itself in spotting key trends in the economy and in business. It has done this consistently over decades, whether it was spotting the rise of the IT sector in the 90s, the pharma, the telecom industry trends in the late 90s, or the social media, healthcare, and e-tailing revolution of recent times. My guest today is Mythily Ramesh, who has more than 30 years of experience in her career. She completed her BE in computer science and then did an MBA from the IIM Ahmedabad. She has donned so many different roles and also is a Six Sigma black belt. In 2006 and 7, she was adjudged one of the 25 most powerful women in India by India Today and Dataquest. She's currently the co-founder and CEO of NextWealth, which is a social entrepreneurship firm that provides world-class customer interaction and data intelligence services to its customers across the AI, ML, tech, e-commerce, fintech, and other domains. She's an independent director, of course, and she's on the board of Karnataka Bank, WiproEPeripherals, and serves on the board of India Institute of Management, Udaipur, and Impact. Welcome, Mythily. Business World and Sipping Thoughts are so excited to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Sukirti. I'm really happy to be here. It's my pleasure. I see Dr. Anurag has also joined in.
Yes, he's just coming on board, which is awesome because, we want to get started. But I want you to first tell us a little bit about your journey and how you started. Because when you started 30 years ago, yes, we had heard the word AI, but it wasn't all the rage that it is today.
Right. Yeah, first of all, happy to be here and thanks to Sipping Thoughts as well as Business World. And I just thought, Sipping Thoughts is such a very nice phrase because, there's a time you're sipping tea and sharing thoughts.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, my journey actually started almost 30 years back in, I think 1988 when I graduated from IIM Ahmedabad and joined Wipro from campus. Was at Wipro for about 30 years in various roles, and the Six Sigma Black Belt path that we spoke about was in Wipro. I won't get into the details of that, but that was a great journey for the first 20 years. Learned a lot from there. And then once that stint was over, wanted to do something different and wanted to start on my own. And that's how, along with the three other Wipro colleagues, we started NextWealth, which is focused on AIML data services, but from small towns. And probably I'll talk about that a little bit later when we are into the Q&A session. So the journey in the last 10 years has been, so it's been two parts, right? First 20 years has been Wipro, and the next 10 years has been as an entrepreneur. And in it's a social entrepreneurship space. It's been fantastic. I think learned a lot, both in those first 20 years stint in Wipro as well as the 10 years stint now as a woman entrepreneur. And happy to share some of those thoughts.
Well, before we proceed, I want you to give us a little bit idea about your social entrepreneurship organization and the number of people that are connected, so people do understand the size and scale that we are speaking about.
Right. So So as I said, we started about 10 years back. We are a social entrepreneurship firm. And what that actually means is that we are for profit. We are not an NGO, we are for profit, but with a social objective. And our social objective and vision is to provide jobs to people in small towns. And why is this? Is because most of the IT and BPO organizations in the country today are focused on the top 10 cities. They recruit from the top 10 cities. And most of them don't go to the small towns, and there are over 250 small towns in the country. So they are the set of graduates who are sort of got marginalized, and almost 60% of the colleges in the country are in these small towns. So these graduates don't have any job opportunities, so they come to the city looking for a job. So our endeavor is to see how we can match the demand in the city with the supply in the small town, take the work to the small towns, and therefore be a lot more inclusive in terms of including these people in the job scene which is there. And the premise is that if work can be given 3,000 miles from US to India, why not from India to 300 miles away to the small towns, right? So that's how we started. And so it is inclusive in the sense we have a whole lot of small towns and graduates from there who no longer have to travel to the city, but can have find a job in their own hometown. Second, we also are the diversity employer in the sense that 60% of our employees, we have 2,700 employees across 6 centers in the country, and 60% of our employees are women. And so that is the second part. And third part, we are in the AIML space, and which is what we are going to be talking about today. And it's a huge area and huge opportunity. So we are in the AIML data services space doing cutting edge work, like some of which I will talk about, but image annotation, video annotation, LiDAR, and so on. So that's where we are, and we do work for some of the top companies, including Walmart Labs, IBM, and so on. And we are, because of this job means a lot to the people here. The attitude and commitment is so good. The quality of work, I can say, is far better than what you would see in the cities or any of the top organizations. So and the measure of that is what the customer ultimately says, right? So our customer satisfaction score, which is our net promoter score, which is a measure in the industry, is 72, which is one of the highest in the industry in this space. So which is, testimony to the fact that work from these smaller towns, attrition is lower, the attitude is great, commitment is great, quality of work is great, and cost is probably half the cost of the city.
Now, I have a question because, of course, everybody thinks in the pandemic, we've all learned that we can actually work from anywhere. But you've been doing this for quite a while.
Right. So ours is not so much of work from anywhere as much as work from small towns. Right. But now with this because of the pandemic situation and COVID and work from anywhere, it essentially means that we can now employ a lot more women who are not in the job space because they don't want to take up a full-time job. So we are looking at alternate models. One is, of course, the work from small towns part of it. And within the work from small towns, can women work from home, part-time, flexi, in a crowdsourcing model? All of those is what we are looking at right now. And pandemic has actually helped to open up the vistas for women.
And my last question before I turn it over to you is that what about finding that talent? Because people feel that the talent is actually much more situated in the major cities, or possibly in not even here, but the metros specifically.
Yeah. So that is actually a myth, because while, of course, the universities and the talented people are there, a lot more universities are concentrated in the top 10 cities. But, as I said, there are more than, 250 small towns, and 60% of the colleges are here. The skills available is really good. But what happens is, when any of these top IT or BP organizations come and interview, they tend to look at the style of communication and the communication, how good the communication is rather than the actual work. So I find that the quality of people from here is far better. They take a little more time in terms of the training and ramp up because they've never been exposed to something like this. But once that is done, they stick to the quality of work, and that is really exceptional. We've been serving some of the large multinational organizations, and all of them have given testimonies, which is, I've never even seen in Wipro. So that is the sort of, quality of skills which is available here. And we also pick and choose centers where there are, enough skills and adequate skills available. So we are in 6 centers. We have 2,700 people, more than 1,500 are women, all trained in AIML services.
That's fantastic. Now over to you. I know we're dying to get into the next wave of AIML.
So I'm going to share a presentation. Give me a moment. Can you see this?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm trying to put it in slideshow. It may come up in slideshow. I hope so. Is it in slideshow?
No, it's okay. I think though. Let's.
Okay. So, yeah. So, when we are talking about AIML, most people tend to think, what is it all about? And, I remember, Sukriti, you had asked me, can you first talk about the definition? So here I'm going to just talk about first about what is the AIML space all about, right? And I'm going to remove, actually, I'm going to remove the slideshow and see if this is better.
Are you, we're still on your first slide. So.
Okay. So I'm going to focus first on the definitions which are there behind AIML, big data, and all the other things that we talk about. And then I'm going to talk about saying what are the typical applications that are there, and what are the opportunities for people who are wanting to venture into this space, entrepreneurs, people who want to look at services, etc. And then, we'll probably open it up for discussion on what India can do and what are the opportunities in this space, right? So first, a little bit about the definitions. So when we talk about big data, just look at in 1 minute. Actually, this was a question I would have probably popped up.
Your slide is still the first slide. So if you're trying to show us.
Just give me a minute. Let me stop share and restart. Just give me a minute.
No worries.
Can you see now?
Yes.
Okay. So in 60 seconds, if you take, in 1 minute, how much of data is being generated? It goes into, this is something that I just learned, quadrillions, which is 1 followed by 15 zeros. So just look at the chart. In 1 minute, there are over 3.8 million search queries which are happening. And there are over 1 million, and this is data, mind you, as of last year. So which means that this year, and with the pandemic and COVID, this has probably gone up multiple times. In Facebook, if you take, there are over 1 million people who are logging in 1 minute. There are 18 million texts which are getting sent out. 188 million emails which are getting sent out. 4.5 million videos are getting viewed. What does all this mean? This is so much of data that is either getting generated or getting viewed. It's a huge amount of data which is there. And this has actually gone up over 2016 to, 2000, in the last 8 years, last 4 years, this has gone up 10 times. And why has this happened? Of course, it is because of all the social media apps which have come in, but also because there is today an unlimited access to computing power, and there is cost of data, storing data. All of this data which gets generated has to be stored somewhere, right? So cloud computing has come in, but the cost of storing data has fallen from 500K USD about 10 years back to 6 cents today. And the sphere of the data is 163 zettabytes. That is the amount of data which needs to be stored. That is a trillion gigabytes. I want to talk about the number of zeros which are to be attached to that. So that is the bigness of the big data when we talk about big data. So what do we mean by, is it going to the next slide? Yeah. Are you able to see it?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So when we talk about big data, it is actually dealing with extremely large data. So when we say big data, it's just not the data. It is the entire cycle. It looks at the ways to deal with, how to analyze, how to extract, how to slice, dice, look at insights, look at the analytics which can come out of it. How can we work with data to translate it into meaningful information? That is what the entire big data space is about. And typically, when we say data, big data, there are 5 V's associated with it, which is basically volume, which is a volume of data which is there, and we know that is huge. Variety can be structured data, unstructured data, can be audio, video, images, and so on. The velocity, the speed at which data is getting generated. There's something called value and veracity, which is the truth of the data from that huge amount of data. All of this actually define big data. And all of this comes from where? It comes from, of course, we know social media, which we talked about in the previous slide. But more and more, this data is also coming up from, it could be from wearables, it could be from IoT devices, it could be, the cameras which are there positioned in the junction points. It could be the shop floor machines which are doing continuous condition-based monitoring. It could be drones which are getting deployed. One of the projects that we in NextWealth are doing is where there are drones which are taking videos of the railroad tracks in the US. And you can imagine the amount of data that is getting generated. They are taking the video pictures so that, any fault in the railroad tracks can be identified. So that is a huge amount of data which gets generated from that, which then has to be looked at by an algorithm to identify whether there is any fault or not which is happening there. So this is how big data deals with this extremely large data. Now, obviously, with so much of data which is there, we need some sort of technology to be able to make sense out of this and translate it into information, right? So this is where AI, ML, and deep learning comes in. So, and I'm just going to give quick definition, Sukriti. This is a topic which can go on for hours. So in the 15 minutes, I'm trying to do justice to this. When we say artificial intelligence, what do we mean? So artificial intelligence is where we have a system which tries to mimic a human in terms of either learning or thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, any of those things. When it tries to mimic a human, that is when we call it artificial and intelligence. Within that, the subset is ML, which is machine learning. And what do we mean by machine learning? Here, a machine tries to learn, where a machine learns without us explicitly giving a program to it. So for example, it will learn the relationship between an input and outcome. Just let me give an example of, let's say, real estate prices. So when we say real estate prices and we want to estimate, we look at various factors or features which will impact the pricing, which could be the locality, it could be the area, it could be the number of bedrooms, it could be the city, and a whole lot of, whether it's upstairs, downstairs, land area, and so on. So there are various factors which actually determine the pricing of the real estate. So in machine learning, what we do is the various transactions of, let's say, all of these features and the pricing is actually input into the algorithm. And what it does is it learns the relationship between the input, all these feature inputs, and the pricing, which is the outcome. It builds that relationship. So next time when you give, say you're going to buy a land and you give all these features, there's a very simple example because it just has 4 or 5 factors. There could be other things which has thousands of factors. So when you give these factors, it predicts what the pricing will actually be. So machine learning actually builds the relationship on its own, given a set of transactions which has these features. Deep learning is one more subset of machine learning. And here is where it actually learns complex things. It actually uses neural networks, which mimics the neurons in our brain. And in this case, since it's a subset of machine learning, here even organized data is not required, right? So the features that we talked about in the previous example of machine learning is something that the deep learning system figures out itself. So it itself does the feature extraction. So example is, if you want to know what types of cars are crossing at a particular junction, then what you would do is to give this neural network algorithm, you would give it inputs from inputs in terms of various car sizes, colors, types, and so on. You would also give the actual input of the cameras, camera output. The cameras captured these cars and vehicles which are crossing the junction. That would also be given as an input to the neural network. It will then figure out and cluster what types of cars. It just does the clustering, and then will give you the answer in terms of number of cars of a particular type on that road. So these are all methodologies or algorithms which help us to make sense of the plethora of data which is there, right? So when we talk about artificial intelligence, what are the aspects? What are the various elements? So there, if you look at a human can speak, can read, can hear, can move around, can walk, can think, stores data, draws conclusions, has emotions, and so on. So if you take each one of these aspects, ability to move around is the robotics part. Perceiving things, seeing and understanding, perceiving things is computer vision. Listening and understanding human language is NLP. Then storing the data and then pulling it out and using it for future is knowledge representation. Then looks at stored information, and then based on that stored information draws, like a typical doctor would do, uses that stored information to answer and draw conclusions, would be something like an expert system. And of course, there are self-learning algorithms which are able to look at the past, draw conclusions, and from the newer information which is coming in, learns on its own. So artificial intelligence actually addresses one or two aspects of these things only. All of these things that a human does is not something any AI system can do, but this field is known as artificial general intelligence. So let's look at some sample applications. I'm staying at a very high level. Just an example, and these are across all the industries. They have applications wherever there is huge amount of data. Let's take an example of medical diagnosis. So looking at the doctor as actually, first of all, there are multiple patients of different demographics, young, old, different comorbid factors, different environment, different cities, different culture, etc. There are different doctors who do different type of diagnosis. So in medical diagnosis field, you're looking at the history of data of various patients and what type of symptoms they had for a particular type of disease, what type of treatment was given, what was the outcome. So, and therefore, when another patient comes in with this type of symptoms, and what was prescribed in the past, what worked, and therefore you try to do something like that today. So that is where ML would come in to say, this is what you should, this is a diagnosis, and this is how the treatment should be. Self-driving cars as an example. So there are, Google itself, I think, has about 300 cars which are self-driving cars in the US which is constantly going around and gathering data as it moves around. Now, self-driving cars would require information, or would require the self-driving cars would typically have an AI algorithm set up within, which has been trained to look at what is there in front of the road, different vehicles in front, people walking, trees, signboards, when should it stop, the traffic signals. All of this is data which would actually be given to this AI system within the car, and therefore this runs to lakhs and millions of data, which would be either video, images, tagging, which would get done, and therefore and that's how self-driving cars have these embedded within. More close, something which is familiar to all of us would be, let's say, product recommendations. So when we go and buy on Amazon, it actually looks at saying, what have you bought in the past, the type of things that you're interested in, and therefore would give you recommendations of saying, maybe you'd be interested in this also. Or on YouTube, whenever you're watching your video, it picks up on all the videos you've seen in the past and the videos you're continuing to see, to actually build your profile in terms of the demographics and the type of things that you'd be interested in, and that's what gets thrown up in your YouTube feed. Similarly, there are other areas like speech recognition, image recognition. Speech recognition again is for it finds huge applications, and we ourselves when we actually use it in the daily use it daily when we are accessing Google or we are accessing YouTube. We've ourselves tested it out in terms of, instead of typing, we just say, can you go to Google and can you search on this, right? So the system then looks at, over a period of time, picks up your voice, your searches and language, etc., and then throws up the search results as applicable to you. And a lot of this is to do with personalization. Similarly, it could be with traffic prediction. So over a period of time, there is a whole lot of data that you input into the system, which looks at saying traffic at a particular junction during the various times of the day, various times of the months, various days of the months, and then based on that, you work, but the system looks at it and says at any particular point of time, what could be the traffic there and how much time would it take you to reach from one place to another, which is what Google Maps uses. And as more and more data is actually put into this, the algorithm becomes better and better. So this is just a sample, and of course there are a whole lot of more applications around this that one can look at. So what does this mean in terms of services opportunities or work opportunities? This is very simply put, when we say data, we are talking of audio, we are talking of video, we are talking of text, we are talking of geospatial, or we are talking of images. So there is a whole lot of activity which is going around in training the algorithms that we are building. The AIML algorithms or automation algorithms that we would have has to be trained first. So if we say that this is a cat, or this is sunset, or this is a dog, or this is a house, you have to feed the algorithm a whole lakhs and lakhs of data around it for it to be able to then figure out and say, yes, this is a cat or this is a sunset, when it actually sees something like that. So the data collection, the data has to be collected, it has to be indexed and prepared and classified. So in the case of, when we talked about the cars, we have to say what type of car, what color of a car, the make, and so on. So all that information is actually collected, prepared in a form in which the algorithm can pick it up and work on it. So, and that typically happens for machine learning. In deep learning, you don't even actually classify, but in machine learning, all of this has to be classified and prepared in a way in which these algorithms, which can be AIML or it could be automation algorithms, can actually consume it. So this is what is known as training the algorithm to be able to recognize images, or to be able to recognize, it could be even conversations, it could be conversational AI. You are training it to recognize this. Once that is done, the algorithm will actually output. Just to give an example, we do work for one client in the e-commerce retail space. So what they do is they want to be the cheapest online retailer. So they keep comparing their products and pricing with that of competition. And their catalog list runs into about 80 million or 90 million, which is now impossible for any product manager in that organization to compare this product with their competition. So they have an algorithm which runs in the background, picks up the product from this company and compares the product with the competition company. But let's say if it's a product is, let's say mobile phones. Now, mobile phones will have a whole lot of features. So it has to compare feature to feature to see whether it's comparing the right product. And based on that, the product manager has to take a pricing decision. Now, the algorithm does this 80 million products comparison with competition almost on a daily basis. And you need to know whether it is actually doing the right comparison, because there could be features getting added on a daily basis by competition in this company. So that is where validation comes in, where we look at people who will actually validate the output of that algorithm. So the algorithm will say this product mobile phone and this product of competition is a correct match, and therefore the pricing, this is a pricing difference and you need to take a decision based on this pricing. Now, if that is not validated, the product manager may end up taking a call on pricing, which could be completely wrong. And therefore, it's a revenue leakage for these e-commerce and retail companies. So you need humans to actually validate that output. Also to do the analytics and pull out insights. And when this is actually deployed in a real-time environment, handling the exceptions. So just to give another example, many of you may be familiar with Amazon Go, where you can walk into a store, pick up a product or multiple products, put it into your bag and walk out, and you're automatically billed. Now, the data of all this, of the person picking up the product, putting it into the bag, is all automated by the algorithm. And as you walk out, you're getting billed. But suppose the algorithm is never 100% correct. And as you're walking out, if there is a problem, there are people who will handle this exception. You have to handle that problem within 60 seconds before the customer is walking out of the store. So that is what is meant by saying you need humans to handle these real-time exceptions and to get back to the either the customer or to the algorithm. To do all this training of these algorithms, validating the output and handling these real-time exceptions, you need, and also to build this algorithms itself, the AIML algorithms itself, you need a whole lot of data processors or data scientists who are in huge demand today. So, that has, that just gives a little bit of, and I'm stopping sharing now, gives a little bit of an overview of where this whole thing is about with respect to the definition as well as the opportunity area which is there as far as this industry is concerned, right? Just give me 1 minute and just want to, yeah. So that's where we are, Sukriti. So you get over to you.
Yeah, definitely. I think Anurag is also joined, but I would like to start with our first question, or at least one that's in my mind. So when we hear a lot about AI, ML, we hear a lot of stuff about who's leading the race. You hear that China is on top. You hear that US is leading. Where is India in all of this? Are we just a BPO? Are we just a back end? Some people say we're number 3. I'm not clear. And where is India in this race in terms of AI, ML?
So actually, I think, it's a very good question, because I think US and China are far ahead, and so are UK and France. Out of over 22,000 AI research papers published, only 386 are from India. So India has a very long way to go. One university in China has more AI papers than the whole of India published. Right? Because all these countries, US, China, UK, Canada, for example, all have a national strategy on AI. They have universities which are working on AI papers. They give, support for AI researchers. They have an ecosystem which supports AI entrepreneurs. They even have a ministry of AI, right? And that has happened in the last, I think, 2016, 2017. All these countries have really given a huge thrust to this. So they are probably way ahead. India has been a little bit behind in this, but I think probably catching up, because in 2018, and I'm just going to take a little more time because it's important. In 2018, Prime Minister Modi actually announced AI that there would be a lot of, there would be a grant set aside for AI. And what Niti Aayog has done is they have come out with a national strategy paper on AI, which focuses on bringing all stakeholders together. It also focuses on getting in POCs that can be done. And what they've called is a hashtag AI for all. So it is technology leadership, but being inclusive. And they have identified areas where the government can really play a role, which is basically healthcare, it is agriculture, education, smart cities, and smart mobility with respect to infrastructure. So these are the areas which have been identified, and there is a lot of thrust which is being given there, especially when you see that, for example, agriculture, there is, just to take an example, in agriculture, rice production, we are the lowest in terms of yield, but we are the highest in the world in terms of water consumption for that per acre of land. So there is huge opportunity to bring in AIML here to analyze, soil, quality of the soil, the weather forecast, what seed will work at what time and what season, what type of soil, and help the farmers improve the yield. So all of this is being, and just as an example, all of this is being brought under the national strategy scheme that Niti Aayog is doing.
Anurag, over to you.
Yeah, Ms. Ramesh, let me ask you, I saw your presentation, and clearly, artificial intelligence will lead to singularity. It is predicted that singularity will happen by 2034, right? Do you see with COVID singularity happening before that? And is that a scary prospect for human beings? Or do you see it as an unlocker of potential?
Sorry, the last part I missed you.
So do you see it as unlocking a lot of potential that we have?
Yeah.
For example, you gave the example of agriculture, that, we're so under leveraged for the acreage, we use the most amount of water. So if we had, let's say irrigation through artificial intelligence. So singularity, where machines perform a lot of functions that human beings do, they are able to, think like human beings. Think is not the right word, but act like human beings.
Yeah.
As it is predicted, it will happen by 2034. But it looks like COVID may accelerate it.
Yeah.
So what is your view on that?
So first of all, when we talk about singularity or mimicking humans, AI systems actually mimic one aspect of what humans can do, whether it is, moving around or doing automation things or speaking or thinking. For example, Deep Blue today, can beat some of the top chess players in the world. So it is absolutely only on chess and thinking. But would it be able to see something and or listen to something? No, it cannot. So there are.
But Ms. Ramesh, you're assuming that we won't have anything that, one thing you learned in the last 9 months is never say never.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that is the way it is today. But maybe in 2034, you're talking about the next 15 years, AI can actually do 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of these things that humans are able to do. And that is the direction. And with COVID happening, what has happened is, I think the access to tools, resources, and skills is now seamless all over. So you don't have to be in Bangalore or in New York to be able, or in the Silicon Valley to be able to develop these AI applications. You can be anywhere in probably a place like Malasamudram or Minneapolis, wherever, and you can develop these. So the world is your oyster, you can say. So to that extent, I think the COVID has actually opened up minds to look at skills and tools available seamlessly, and therefore is actually, I think, put this on the expressway, right? And you should see a lot more of applications, especially from entrepreneurs. And for India, it is a huge, I think it is a huge prospect for India, because right now we are not there in the, like Sukriti was pointing out, we are not there in the world map. But here is an opportunity for us to leverage all these resources that we have across the country and world, come out with products and services which have an impact on the nation. Because India is so diverse, whether it's languages or culture or whatever you take, it's so diverse. If you can build for India, you're built for the world.
And since you also serve on the board of IIM Udaipur, right? Now tell us, in education, because you went to an engineering school in the 80s and you went to a top-notch business school. You've been in the industry, now you're an entrepreneur. Do you think that B school education has kept pace with what's happening?
I think they have, you've asked me a very delicate question.
Is our engineering education even preparing?
Yeah, so let me talk about the both. Let me talk about both. Engineering education, I think today, some of the institutes, the IITs and IIScs and those top institutes are doing a lot as far as AIML is concerned. To give you an example, my nephew who is in, I think, second year or third year engineering in IIT Roorkee, he's developing ML-based apps in 1 week, and he says a whole lot of his friends are doing it to solve real-world problems. So what he developed was, how do you diagnose pneumonia given a certain set of symptoms? And it has a first shot, it had an 83% accuracy. So these are the sort of applications which are getting developed in the IITs. But this is not the situation in the other engineering institutes that you would see, which is a tier 2 or tier 3 or what you would see in the smaller towns. I think they are quite a bit behind and would need to play catch up. That is on the engineering side, right? And you know, the initiative by Niti Aayog and the announcement by PM Modi, I think is going to help. As far as IIMs are concerned, I think they do have a lot more way to go, especially with respect to digitalization. Forget about AIML. AIML is the next frontier. They need to look at a lot more with respect to digitalization, and all of them are doing quite a few in this area in terms of digital transformation, bringing in digital as part of what they are doing, digital courses, but lots more before they actually go into the AIML space.
Okay. You're saying one, we need to be, digital in the way we impart, and also, technology education becoming even more integral part of, management education. If you look at Sloan, there are joint courses there, which is, you look at IIT Delhi, you look at IIT Mumbai, IIT Indore and IIM Indore have collaborated on a joint course. So clearly,
Right.
Even the new national education policy advocates, a multidisciplinary approach
Absolutely.
to learning as well as application. So clearly, you're advocating that.
You're right.
Again, I want to ask, this is, Sipping Thoughts, BW Women World, are about women. They're about women leaders. Now, me and Sukirti hosted an event with another tech industry leader. And, women in tech in India are still very few. Women in business are still relatively more than women in tech, but they are much more. How do you make sure at every level of the organization you create leaders? And how do you make sure more women get enrolled in schools, colleges, continuing education? So give us a sense, how can we, you were lucky enough, as I said, to go to top-notch IIM and continue our journey. But tell us, what are the pros you see right now in the environment, and what are the cons that still exist in spite of 30 years of you being in the industry?
Yeah. That's a very relevant and huge topic, Dr. Anurag. But see, actually, if you look at, and I was just researching recently, that if you take women in STEM, which is your science, technology, engineering, math, India's tops is #1 in the world in terms of graduates in STEM area, right? And we see that already. If you take any of these institutes today, women graduates in science and in STEM would be about 40 to 45%. Even in the smaller towns where we operate in, 45% are women are science graduates or in the STEM area. But India ranks 19th in terms of employment of these women in these areas. And there are various aspects to this. So there is, for most women opt for, when they do engineering or graduate, do a science graduate, they opt for science, or they opt for computer science, or they opt for electronics. They do not go towards manufacturing or electrical or any of those areas. So women in tech, actually, if you take the graduate level, it is at 45%. But when they join an organization, any of these IT organizations, it's only 30%. So there is quite a bit of dropout at that level, which needs to be addressed. After they join this, and I was pleasantly surprised, and this probably is more for people here who are women who are logged in here, is to say there is an NGO, Women in AI, which is there. And it has more than 5,000 members, and it has across 115 countries. So here is an opportunity, and especially with COVID and pandemic, wherever you are, you can become part of this fraternity, Women in AI. And if you want to hone your skills, there is this Coursera course, which is there on AI machine learning. There is Udemy course, which is there, which you can pick up. Google has an AI course. So today, I think there is huge opportunities for women to, especially post-COVID, to access all these resources, become members of Women in AI, get into the tech-related jobs. And a lot of organizations today are actually thinking a lot more about crowdsourcing, part-time work, flexi-time work, which is very suitable for women. So I would say this is the right time for women to actually take advantage of this and move into the space very fast.
Okay.
I'll ask a follow-up question on that because I think what we see is these huge salary packages. We see all the buzzwords. What are the other things that you should be thinking about if you're really looking seriously at saying, yes, I want to do an entrepreneurial venture in AIML, or this is really the path that I want to take forward?
Yeah. So apart from the salary part of it, which is what I think you first mentioned, I think this is because of all the data that I just presented, right? Because AIML is actually creeping into every application, every aspect of our lives without even our realizing it. So the next decade is going to be the decade of AIML, right? And unless every one of us are at least know the definitions and are understand what it is capable of doing, we will not remain relevant. So important thing is to remain relevant in the next decade. Second thing is that it is an exciting area with huge amounts of data which needs to be sliced, diced, analyzed, and whole lot of 5 years back the world was very, very different to what it is today. 9 months back it was very different to what it is today. So there's so much that is happening, so much of action which is happening in this space. So it is very exciting to be there. I think more than salary, just the excitement of learning is what people should actually be looking at.
The excitement of learning. I think that's a new word. But I keep saying that Confucius said if you make your hobby your profession, you don't have to work. So you naturally choose areas that you enjoy doing. So,
Absolutely.
Once you do that, you'll succeed. You've been a professional, now you're an entrepreneur. Tell us your own mantra for success as a women leader, and so many women leaders in the audience. What is your own mantra for success? What would you like to say to young women?
I think a lot of women do not tend to take up challenging things because you're a little more diffident. I think the first thing is that you can do it, right? And it is not a question of work-life balance. Like you rightly said, Dr. Anurag, if you really enjoy something, it's no longer work-life, it is just life and life, right? So that is, I would urge them to take on things and, do a lot of things which are challenging. Second is always the thing that comes to women is how do I balance so many things? I think there is always a way out. There is always a way out. So for example, I can give an example of when I had 2 children and my second son was born, I was actually heading the South region in Wipro at that time. I didn't have the support of in-laws. I didn't have the support of parents. And I was alone with 2 children and my husband was traveling at that time, was posted in Hazira. So at that time, it was easy for me to give up and look after the children. But I said, if I can handle this, I can handle anything in life. So, and what I did was I had people to help me in everything, all aspects of life. And one favorite phrase I'm very fond of quoting is, behind every successful woman, there is a man. And behind every successful woman, there is a very efficient maid. Get all the help that you can in the house to help you. So that is the second.
Is there a particular maid agency that you're recommending? No. I have to tell you, I was with my family and my B school friends on Sunday, and the only thing my friends were talking about were maids, and that's true, because really, it does put, in a serious way, it does put extra pressure on the women of the household, because they naturally take upon itself to make sure everyone's needs are taken care of, whether it's about food, cleanliness, or planning ahead for the house. So clearly, you're right in what you say.
Yeah, and so that's the second point, right? And third point is that a little bit of, and you brought that point out, a little bit of planning really helps in all of this. So you might be playing all these roles, but a little bit of planning will definitely help. Fourth, I would say, is in organizations, women again tend to be diffident and not assertive enough. Women actually have the natural advantage of nurturing, looking at all the pros and cons before arriving at a decision. They are consensus led in terms of their decision making process. They bring all of this into the organization. So be a very deep listener, be very inclusive in listening, and empathy comes natural to women. So that is something that they should actually look at. And last, I would say, women actually tend to, sort of feel they are victims. So I would say, don't feel that you're a victim. Actually celebrate being a woman, because you have all those things that are required to be a woman, which is the nurturing aspect of it and the fact that you play so many roles. So I would say actually celebrate being a woman. Don't think of yourself as a victim. And those are the 5 things that I would.
And who are your role models in women?
So my role model is my mother. Okay, she's not working. She's not a working woman. But what she has done is she has, first of all, she's today 86 and she still cooks for everybody in the house. So she has taught me nothing is impossible. You just have to find a way to handle it. So that is one thing she has taught me. Second, she has taught me to extend myself so that my capabilities have expanded to being 150%, or I can handle 150 or 200% of what people would do. And that is something that she has taught me. And third is she has always taught me to aim higher and higher, whether it is not in terms of career, but in terms of learning or doing something well, or going, and of course, up the career. And fourth is she's always said, look at hard work. Don't look at how many times that you're doing something. You might do 100 times, but people will look at the output. So if it takes 100 times, do it 100 times so that you get it right. So that is something that she has taught me, which has stayed with me through. I think it has helped me through my career, and she is definitely my role model.
You
Fantastic.
described AIML as yin and yang for women. Why is that?
Sorry?
The yin and yang, that this is what AIML is and that is what it could be for women. Please expound on that.
Okay, so there is the AIML is something which is more related to algorithms and technology, and people tend to think technology, algorithms, anything to do with AIML, IoT, etc. is a very male-dominated space, which actually it is not, because a lot of these things are applications to real-world problems which are there today, which could be in healthcare or agri and so on. So there is the women's side of things where, and this is more, I think, a social clustering which has happened, where there is a women's side of things and there is the hardcore technology side of things. I just want to say that these go very well together, because AIML and other technologies and algorithms are addressing real world problems that are there today. So just to give an example, in my engineering, which is many years back, I'm talking about more than 30 years back, we had to do a project in the final year. Should I put the lights on? Is it looking dark?
No, yeah. No, but you're shining through.
Okay. So one of the projects that we had was we went to there's I don't know if you've heard of the Adyar Institute, Cancer Institute, and we went there, and then this was 30 years back. We developed and we saw the condition there, and we actually developed, myself and a friend of mine, we developed an expert systems for identifying Hodgkin's disease, which is a type of cancer. So the development of that and the fact that this is something that we should do to help the doctors there or help the patients who come there is something that we developed at that point of time. So this is a combination of something that can work really well, especially in problems which are related to healthcare or agri or software issues which may be there.
Thank you. We'll take 2 questions from the audience. Urvi, go ahead. Please ask your question.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask you that there is a speculation that artificial intelligence will take over jobs from human beings in the future. And women are usually the first to face the brunt of job losses, as we have seen in the times of COVID. Don't you think this is ironic that given AI is supposed to create more jobs, but at the same time they are laying off, and women are usually socially the first to bear the brunt of it?
Yeah, Urvi, good question. So, many years back, almost 40 years back, when computers were just coming in, at that time people said, oh, computers are coming and taking away human jobs. Humans will be without jobs. But actually it was proved otherwise. The moment computers came in, other applications came in and more people were required, and the job industry actually in the last 20 years, post 2000 or so, has actually boomed. This is something that is happening in AIML space. In the last 5 years, the data has gone up 10 times. And I talked about it in the first slide, has gone up 10 times, and the plethora of data and the variety of data and the speed with which this data has been generated, which is the volume, velocity, and variety which is there, is huge, is humongous. We can't even get our minds around it. So this has actually is in the starting point. You will see in the next decade, like we saw in 2000 to 2010, you will see 2020 to 2030. Lot of people require and opportunities existing for people who can do data services, who can develop algorithms, who can train these algorithms, who can validate this output, who can handle exceptions. And this is actually going to increase the job opportunities which are there today. And this is why, I sort of gave that in the last slide. Post-pandemic, and even before that, given this sort of data which is being generated, post-pandemic, now actually most organizations are looking at saying, can I have women working from wherever they are in a can I crowdsource women with these capabilities? Can I do flexi time operations? Can I work in, there's a lot of women in small towns who are also looking for these opportunities, because 45% of the graduates are women in these small towns. So with combination of this explosion of data and the fact that work from anywhere has happened, and there are different models available now of crowdsourcing or flexi time, I think the job portal or opportunity is just exploded for women.
Thank you. We'd like to take the next question from Vandana. Go ahead, Vandana.
Yes, hi ma'am, Vandana on this side. I have a question that there is plethora of information which is available on YouTube, Coursera, edX, and Udemy, and most of them like it is like economical price, even free. Blogs are there, even there are institutes, and so there's so much of information to read, news. So what to actually grasp, because and what should be our approach to actually take the things, because even after doing the certificate there is something which is missing, because there is a lot of information coming on a daily basis.
Right. So if you want to just kill yourself, and I don't know your background, Vandana, but let's say if you want to get good appreciation of AIML and the the opportunities there, or just to understand what this is all about and what are the opportunity areas, one thing you can do is the Google AI course is there. That is something that you can look at. Or you can look at the machine learning course, which is there in Coursera by Andrew Ng. He's the founder of Coursera, but that's a very good course on machine learning and its applications. Gives you a very good understanding of these terminologies and opportunities. Or in Udemy, there is a course on machine learning and computer vision. So I would suggest these three courses that you can do, and these are very simple and easy to understand. It'll give you a good understanding of the opportunities and will also help you to skill yourself to a certain extent, so that you can look at probably job opportunities in this area.
Fantastic. Thank you. The last question we'll take from Kanika. Kanika, go ahead.
Hi, Mythily. It was really a knowledgeable session that you shared. I'll just give a background before I pose my question. So I'm working more as a leading the digital team. So I need to actually understand AI both from the perspective of the business implementation as well as a bit on the technology side, so that the things are clear when I'm speaking to the developers or getting those things implemented while I'm thinking. So you just mentioned about 2-3 courses just now to the Vandana's question. So do you think they are good enough, or do you suggest any other right course or right session that I need to attend to understand this?
Yeah, I think your role is a very crucial role to understand the technology part of it, as well as understand the application side of it. These three courses actually are not pure technology, but they give you an appreciation of technology and how it can be applied into real world situations, right? So I think if you do these courses, and then once you do this course, there are courses in Coursera as well as in Udemy, which actually looks at saying, how do you look at the applications, real world problems or applications, and how do you translate that into either algorithms or machine learning algorithms that you can design. So you can do these courses. It'll give an appreciation of both the technology side as well as application side. Once you do this, it'll lead you to the ones which are more deeper in technology or deeper on the application side. So you can decide which side you want to go after that.
Do you mind if you just repeat the 3 courses?
Yeah, the 3 courses are Google on AI. Second one is on Coursera by Andrew Ng, which is on machine learning and applications. And third one is Udemy, machine learning and computer vision. You can just check that out.
Well, thank you, Mythily. That was a very, very fast 60 minutes. Any last words of advice before we sign off for the evening?
Yeah, so I just want to say one from an India perspective. I think there is a lot that can be done. And I'm going to talk, last words is from India perspective and for us, for women who can actually take advantage. From an India perspective, I think India will benefit a lot from what Niti Aayog is doing. But if we have a national strategy on AI, like all the other countries are doing, it is going to be something which will really benefit us. Second, encouraging universities to have AIML courses in the final year, not only restricted to computer science, but also to others, because even in manufacturing, you need to use AIML, or in electronics, you need to use AIML. So that would be the second. Third is encouraging and building an ecosystem of entrepreneurs who can actually start startups in this AIML space. That would be the third. Fourth would be something like the other countries are doing, have a ministry for AI, which can actually bring the national policy with respect to this. And last is encourage AI researchers. Like I said, only 386 out of 20,000 papers worldwide are in the AI space. So encourage researchers in this space is something that India can do. So that is one aspect. From women and for all others aspect from their perspective is, I think we need to skill ourselves from the point of what technology can do, not getting deep into technology at this stage, but what technology can do in what application areas is something that all of us need to have a knowledge about to remain relevant in the next decade. And I think that is very important. I would encourage a lot of women here to understand this and look at what are the nation building problems that can be addressed. Today, if you look at India, India can be very relevant to the world in the next decade because India has such diversity. So if you build and test in India with this diversity of different languages, different cultures, different accents, and even if you take agricultural healthcare, there is such huge diversity. So if you can build for India with this diversity and complexity, it can be applicable anywhere in the world. So I would encourage a lot of entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, to get an understanding and really look at what are the nation building opportunities which are there, whether the agriculture, education, healthcare, financial services space, which if you develop for the complexity of India, can be something that can be taken worldwide.
So definitely your excitement is palatable. I mean, I can see that. I mean, I'm almost feeling excited that I think I need to go and take one of these courses myself and upskill. But thank you very much on behalf of Sipping Thoughts and Business World for an excellent, excellent session. I think it gave us a lot of insight into this topic. So thank you for joining us today. And I
Thank you so much, Sugati. My pleasure. And I hope I've answered all the questions.
Yes, and we wish everyone a good night. Thank you for joining us today.
Good night.
Good night.
Namaskaram.